You've probably heard it your whole life. Renting is throwing money away, you're paying someone else's mortgage. Owning is always the better move. But here's what almost nobody tells you. Right now, in a lot of cities across America, buying a home is actually the worst financial decision by a lot. We're talking tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars over a decade. And on the flip side, in other cities, buying still makes complete sense, and renting will quietly destroy your long-term wealth. The truth is, the rent versus buy question doesn't have one answer. It has a math problem. And once you understand the math, you'll never feel guilty about renting again, or you'll finally see why buying is the right move for your specific situation. By the end of this video, you'll know the exact framework to figure out which one wins for you this year, the hidden costs almost nobody talks about, and the one number that determines the answer faster than any calculator. Let's get into it. Why? This question is harder than ever. The rent versus buy debate used to be relatively simple. For most of the 20th century, mortgage rates were reasonable, home prices grew steadily, and renting was usually the worst deal over a long enough timeline. Buying was almost always the default smart move. That world doesn't exist anymore. Home prices have roughly doubled in many cities over the last decade. Mortgage rates have settled into a range that's much higher than the historic lows of 2020 and 2021. Property taxes keep climbing. Home insurance, especially in coastal and disaster-prone areas, has gotten dramatically more expensive. And maintenance costs for older homes have become a meaningful drag on household budgets. Meanwhile, rents in some cities have actually softened. Apartment supply has caught up with demand in places where there was a building boom, and renters who stay put often see smaller annual increases than headlines suggest. So right now, the math has flipped in many markets. The default answer of always buy no longer works. You actually have to run the numbers for your specific city, your specific income, and your specific timeline. The big myth: rent is throwing money away. Let me address the biggest myth right up front, because it's the one that drives most bad decisions. The idea that rent is throwing money away is wrong. It's that simple. When you rent, you are buying something. You're buying housing for a month. You get a roof, a kitchen, plumbing, a place to live and sleep and work. That's not throwing money away. That's paying for a service you used. When you buy, you also pay for many things that don't build equity: mortgage interest, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs, closing costs, PMI, if you put less than 20% down. None of that money builds your wealth. It just leaves your bank account. In fact, in the early years of a mortgage, the vast majority of your monthly payment goes to interest, not principal. If you have a $400,000 loan at 7%, in your first year you'll pay roughly $28,000 in interest and only about $4,000 toward the actual home. $28,000 of mortgage interest, gone. That's also money you'll never see again. So when people say renters are throwing money away, the honest answer is, so are most homeowners, especially in the first decade. The question isn't whether you're throwing some money away. You are. The question is which option throws less and which option builds more wealth on the back end. The hidden costs of owning nobody talks about. When you compare the cost of buying versus renting, most people compare the monthly mortgage payment to monthly rent. That comparison is almost always wrong because it leaves out massive expenses that homeowners pay and renters don't. Let me walk through them because each one is bigger than you think. Property taxes, depending on where you live, this can range from less than 1% to over 2.5% of your home's value every year. On a $500,000 home in a high-tax state, that's $12,500 a year. Over $1,000 a month, that does not go toward building equity. Home insurance. National averages have climbed dramatically. Many homeowners are now paying $1,800 to $4,000 a year, and in high-risk areas like Florida, California, and parts of the Gulf Coast, that number can be 3 or 4 times higher. Maintenance and repairs. The general rule of thumb is to budget 1% to 2% of your home's value per year for maintenance. On a $500,000 home, that's $5,000 to $10,000 a year. Some years you spend nothing. Other years your water heater dies, your roof needs replacing, and your HVAC unit gives out. It averages out, and the average is bigger than people expect. HOA fees, if applicable, these can run anywhere from $100 to over $1,000 a month, and they typically rise faster than inflation. Closing costs. When you buy, you'll typically pay 2% to 5% of the home's price in upfront fees. On a $500,000 home, that's $10,000 to $25,000. Gone the day you sign. Selling costs. When you eventually sell, you'll pay roughly 5% to 6% in real estate commissions plus other transaction fees. On the same home, that's another $25,000 to $30,000. Add all of this up, and home ownership costs significantly more per month than the mortgage payment alone. In many cases, the true monthly cost is 50% to 80% higher than the mortgage payment by itself. This is what people mean when they say renting can actually be cheaper. They're not making it up, they're just doing more honest math. The hidden benefits of renting nobody talks about. On the other side, renting has financial benefits that almost never get discussed. Let me walk through them too. Flexibility. You can leave with 30 to 60 days notice. If you get a better job, a relationship change, or just decide you want to try a new city, you can. A homeowner who has to sell faces tens of thousands of dollars in transaction costs and months of process, no exposure to repairs. Your dishwasher breaks, you call the landlord. Your roof leaks, not your problem. This isn't just convenience, it's financial protection. A bad year of repairs can wipe out a homeowner's emergency fund. A renter's insulated from all of that. No exposure to property tax increases. Your rent might go up, but you're not personally responsible for a sudden 30% jump in assessed value or a new local tax that adds $300 a month to your housing cost. The ability to invest the difference. This is the big one most people miss. If renting in your area is $1,500 a month cheaper than the all-in cost of owning, you have an extra $1,500 a month or $18,000 a year that can go into investments. Over 10 years with average returns, that's well over $250,000 in additional wealth. That last point is the heart of the rent versus buy debate. It's not just about which monthly payment is lower, it's about what you do with the difference. The one number that decides it. There's a single number you can use to quickly figure out whether buying or renting makes more sense in your market. It's called the price to rent ratio. Here's how to calculate it. Take the median home price in your area and divide it by the median annual rent for a comparable home or apartment. If the ratio is below 15, buying tends to win. If the ratio is between 15 and 20, it's roughly a tie. And your specific situation matters more than the math. If the ratio is above 20, renting tends to win, sometimes by a wide margin. Let me give you some real examples to make this concrete. In Cleveland, Ohio, the price to rent ratio is around 11. Buying is clearly the better financial move there. In Houston, Texas, it's around 14. Buying still tends to win, but it's not a runaway. In Atlanta, Georgia, it's around 17. It's basically a coin flip, and your specific situation determines the answer. In New York City, it's around 25. Renting almost always wins, especially in Manhattan and Brooklyn. In San Francisco and parts of Los Angeles, it's around 28 to 32. Renting wins by a huge margin, and it isn't even close. This single number tells you 80% of what you need to know. Find your city's price to rent ratio, you can Google it, and you'll instantly understand which way the math leans in your area. The timeline that flips the answer. The other variable that matters more than almost any other is how long you plan to stay. The reason is simple. The closing costs, transaction fees, and early year interest payments on a home are massive. You need years of equity buildup and appreciation just to break even on those upfront costs. The general rule is the 5-year break even. If you're going to live in the home for less than 5 years, renting almost always wins, regardless of the price to rent ratio. The transaction costs alone will eat up any gains you make. If you're going to live there 7 to 10 years, the math starts to tilt toward buying in most markets, because you have enough time for appreciation and principal paydown to overcome the upfront costs. If you're going to live there 15 plus years, buying usually wins almost everywhere except the most extreme high-cost markets. So before you even pull up a calculator, ask yourself one question: how long am I really going to be here? Be honest about this. The average homeowner sells within 13 years, the average younger homeowner sells in 7. If you're buying with the assumption that you'll be there forever, but life realistically might move you in 3 to 5 years, the math is brutal. The lifestyle factors. Nobody should ignore. So far we've been talking about money, but the rent versus buy decision is also a lifestyle decision, and you shouldn't ignore that side of it. Buying makes sense if you want stability and roots. If you have kids and you want them to stay in the same school district, if you found the place you genuinely want to be for a long time, if you want to renovate, paint, change anything you want without permission, Renting makes sense if you value flexibility. If your career might take you somewhere new, if you don't want to deal with maintenance, if you're not sure what city or neighborhood you want to commit to long term, if you want to keep your wealth liquid and invested rather than tied up in a single asset, neither answer is morally better. Owning a home is not a sign that you're a real adult. Renting is not a sign that you've failed. These are just different financial vehicles for different life situations, and the right choice depends on you. The investment comparison. People forget. Here's the part that changes how a lot of people think about this question. When you buy a home, you're putting a huge amount of money into one asset, concentrated in one location, in one type of investment that you can't easily sell or rebalance. If your local housing market struggles, your wealth struggles. If your roof needs replacement, your wealth gets hit. If your job moves you, you can't just take the asset with you. A diversified investment portfolio behaves completely differently. It's spread across thousands of companies, multiple sectors, and often multiple countries. It's liquid, it generates dividends, and over the long run, the US stock market has averaged roughly 10% annual returns, while US home prices have averaged closer to 4% to 5%, and that 4% to 5% doesn't account for the massive expenses that come with owning the home in the first place. When you factor in those costs, residential real estate as an asset class has actually underperformed the stock market over almost every multi-decade period. This doesn't mean you shouldn't buy a home. A home gives you something an index fund can't: a place to live, control over your environment, freedom from a landlord, and stability for your family. Those things have real value, even if they don't show up in a spreadsheet. But you should buy your home for those reasons, not because you've been told it's the smartest financial move, because right now, in many cities, it isn't. Here's the bottom line. This year, the rent versus buy question has no universal answer. It depends on three things: the price to rent ratio in your city, how long you'll realistically stay, and whether you'll actually invest the difference if renting is cheaper. If your price to rent ratio is under 15 and you're staying for 7+ years, buying probably wins. Run the numbers and consider it seriously. If your ratio is over 20 and you're staying less than 7 years, renting almost certainly wins. Don't feel pressured by anyone telling you that you're throwing money away. The math doesn't agree. If you're in the middle, look at the full picture: your lifestyle, your career flexibility, your investment habits, and the true all-in cost of ownership versus the rent you'd pay. And whichever path you choose, the most important thing isn't the housing decision itself. It's what you do with the rest of your money. A renter who invests the difference can easily outbuild wealth compared to a homeowner who doesn't. And a homeowner who builds equity and also invests will outbuild wealth compared to a renter who spends every dollar. The real wealth question isn't should I buy or rent? It's what am I doing with the money either way? If this video changed how you think about buying versus renting, do me a favor and subscribe. Net Worth Nation is built for people who are done being told what to do with their money and ready to actually run the numbers for themselves. Drop a comment below. Are you renting or buying right now? And if you're considering a change in right now, what's your price to rent ratio in your city? I read every comment, and your questions become future videos. Share this video with someone who's been beating themselves up about renting, or someone who's about to make a buying decision without doing the math. You might save them 6 figures. I'll see you in the next one. Let's build.